my eyesight was going blurry. Like, I legit thought I was about to die. Right guys, in this video, something a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you guys about my experience with anxiety. I have a lot of it, which is not good, but good for this video. We're also going to run through a little pool session, so if you want to get some training stuff involved as well, stick around, we're going to go to the gym. I've, I would say suffered, I guess. I've dealt with anxiety for about 6 years, maybe 7, maybe more, knowingly anyway. I've knowingly dealt with anxiety, and at a point depression as well, but we're not going to talk about this. When I first started, it was kind of like a mixture of the two, but we're going to talk about anxiety. There was no real cause. It wasn't like anything that like triggered it, to be honest. And this is the most frustrating part for me, because if there's a trigger, you just avoid that trigger. And for me, there was no initial trigger. And also medication never worked. I tried 4 different types of medication and none of them actually worked for me. So I had to find something that I had to kind of manage it myself. One thing that I will, actually, Greg's here as well. Sav's actually there as well. Just a bunch of floating hands in this room. But if you guys don't mind me saying,
yeah,
both think these two have both suffered with anxiety and still do. I guess. Yeah.
And weirdly have the same symptoms as well.
Yeah. Maybe it's contagious. Maybe you both caught it from me. Sorry. No, this is a whole house. This is anxiety house. Welcome.
Woo!
So I thought a good way to do this is Greg's just going to ask me a couple of questions about my experience and my anxiety. And if Sav wants to, she can. She has a plan. We haven't planned to. And then hopefully Greg might ask some of the questions that you guys want to know the answers to. So, let's go. Shoot.
Right. So these are just a few things that when I was going for anxiety, just things I wanted to know. So one of the main things was, what were your techniques to deal with anxiety, like when you were having an anxiety attack or you felt like you were going to have an anxiety
So
attack?
if it got really bad?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is the thing. For me to manage my anxiety, I had to come up with more preventative techniques, as opposed to like, oh, now I feel anxious, this is what I'm going to do. I figured out that for me, I had to kind of plan ahead. But obviously, the cause for anxiety is very different for everyone, which means the techniques are going to be different. When I started to get anxious, for me personally, it helped for me to look at my life. Like literally, I would put my life down on paper. I would go back to my goals, like what do I want? I might actually like document this whole process, because I feel like just this process might be beneficial for some people. But I would sit down and go, right, what do I want? Like, what are my goals? Like, I need to reflect, what am I, everything that I'm putting in, what am I doing it for? So I had to look at my goals again. I had to break down the steps, the actionable steps, they're called, that I was supposed to be doing to help me reach my goals. And then I needed to actually look at this and think, am I still doing these steps? And is it too much, or am I not doing enough? Because my anxiety comes from, like I said before, it wasn't triggered by anything, but it gets worse when I am out of routine. I don't feel like I'm being productive. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And actually recently, funny enough, when I'm doing too much. For me, my main technique, obviously if I'm feeling completely super anxious, I just stop, I switch off, I try some breathing techniques. I was recently doing the Wim Hof method, and another method that I learned from Andrew Huberman. Huberman. This technique where you can control your heart rate. So what I was doing is, like, when I started to get a bit anxious, my heart rate would increase, and there's a technique where you breathe in, and then you do like a double breath, so you're getting more oxygen in, and the aim is to get more carbon dioxide out. maybe I'll link the video where Andrew Huberman talks about this, but to slow your heart rate, your exhale needs to be longer than your inhale. So you do a fairly short inhale, and then you do the double, and then you exhale for a longer period of time. So it looks something like this, you go. So the exhale is considerably longer. This will help slow the heart rate down. I'll link the video that Andrew Huberman talks about this. So if you guys want to like fully involve yourself and can get really in depth with those sort of techniques, you can check that video out.
Were your anxiety symptoms physical? So when you were actually having anxiety, what were you experiencing?
Okay, so they were obviously a bit physical and a bit, if it gets too far, it becomes physical, but a lot of mine was mental. So I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't concentrate on anything. I find it, at a point, I found it hard to be around other people and talk to other people. So I went through a stage of isolating myself, kind of staying at home and ignoring calls, ignoring messages. Even now, like sometimes I'd be really bad with messaging. And I even have some friends, they're like, oh, you're so bad at messaging, and it's because, yeah. And sometimes I find it hard to like communicate with other people, and I'll just let my messages build up, and then when I feel better, I'll just reply to everyone at the same time. At the end of this, like I had a really kind of traumatic experience recently, and later on in the video, I'll explain that whole situation, but this was very physical recently, yeah.
So did you go to therapy for your...
Yes, I did. So I had counselling. So this was all through the NHS. No, actually that's a lie. So basically, through the NHS, I tried 4 different medications. I literally saw 0 improvement with any of them. As a matter of fact, I think one of them I felt worse. Obviously this is different for everyone. I know other people that are taking medication and it works fine and they kind of rely on it now, which I don't want to do. I didn't want to do, so that's kind of, there's a plus. But so with the NHS, they tried me on these medications, and then they referred me for counselling, but they put me on a waiting list and it just took too long. So then I actually went private and I did counselling. This actually helped me way better, way more than any medications. It was nice to just kind of empty my brain and just talk to someone else, and just, I feel like even if they weren't listening, or it could have been anyone, it didn't even have to be like a qualified counsellor or therapist. It felt nice to just empty all my thoughts out. That's also why I feel like when I get kind of too overwhelmed and too worked up, I do exactly that, but onto paper. Like sometimes I just empty my thought. I write everything down, like how I'm feeling, like what do I need to do, what's my to-do list, what am I working on, what are these actionable steps I should be doing, like to have everything. Because sometimes now I get overwhelmed. I do a lot, like I've got a lot on my plate, and I've always got a lot of projects and stuff going on. So sometimes I feel like I've got so much going on, how do I remember all of it? Like, should I have been doing this? Like, am I keeping up with that? Or sometimes I'll just like go 2 weeks not even thinking about something, and I'll go, oh my God, I didn't even think about this. So sometimes it's just nice to empty my brain onto paper again. But yeah, I did have counselling and it did help me. And I definitely recommend talking to someone if you're dealing with anxiety as well, whether it be a counsellor, a therapist, or someone close to you that cares about you. Try and find someone that cares about you. If no one cares about you, just anyone. Find someone, just talk to someone, go to the park, sit on the bench and chat to a stranger.
So when you're going through stages where you don't feel anxiety, what are your tips to making sure it stays away?
So having a routine helps me avoid anxiety. In an ideal world, I go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, I have my morning routine, I go straight out, get some air, get some light, get some exercise, normally walk down to the beach nice and early, I come back, I have pretty much the same meal, and then I work at the same time, I train at about the same time, and so I have a routine, and I have a daily to-do list. I actually even more specifically have a Monday to-do list, a Tuesday to-do list, and it's in my Apple Notes, and they're all like check boxes. So as I go through my day, I check them all off, and this way for me, it's offering me reassurance to know at the end of the day, I can look back at my to-do list. This is to-do list which I created in my mind dumping phase. Like every now and again, I'll have a complete life MOT, and it helps me to have these check boxes and to-do lists, and mind dumping is really valuable. So like have your Apple Notes on an iPhone, or ideal. If you don't have an iPhone, surely there's some sort of notes app on Android. When you think about something, just write it in your notes. Whether it's like, oh, I need to remember to do that, write it down. Like, oh, I want to add something to my to-do list, or even if it's just an end goal, if you think to yourself, you know what, whatever it be, like, oh, I'd love to own a property in 5 years, whatever. Write it down, because then when it comes to your life planning, you can go, oh, what are my goals? What are my short-term goals? My long-term goals? And you write them all out, and then you can write your actionable steps. Or if it's just something like, oh, I need to remember to send a birthday card to my mum, write it down, like straight away, just write it down. Hopefully that helps a little bit. But I'm going to talk about something that I went through recently. You might have seen some of this on my Instagram. I didn't talk about it too much because I actually came away from social media for a while. I thought, and you might be in the same situation, I thought I was fine. I thought I was dealing with everything. I thought I was pretty stress-free. I thought my anxiety was well managed, and it turns out it wasn't. And it was building up behind the scenes in the background without me even knowing. And I actually took some time off and I went away with some friends. And the day before I came back, I started to get all these really weird symptoms, some pretty intense as well. And this was at the airport. So much so that I spoke to medical staff there, and they wouldn't let us on our plane because they were scared for my health. Eventually, me and Sav spoke to each other, and I was like, basically, I'm gonna pretend to be okay so we can get home. And I did that, and we got on our flight and we got home. But then the following day, the symptoms came again. They were pretty intense, and then I had these symptoms for like 4 weeks. Do you reckon?
Something like that, and they would go through phases of being really bad.
Yeah. So about 4 weeks. Some days they were okay, other days they got really bad. I went to A&E like 3 times, and I thought that something was really seriously wrong with my health. I was somewhat dizzy for 4 weeks straight. Like, I would wake up and be dizzy, like in the middle of the night. I would get up in the morning and like have to get my balance. I was dizzy. I would try to go to the gym and I was dizzy. Like, it just wasn't working. It's like, so, and then I was getting these symptoms, like pretty scary symptoms. I was getting numb hands. I was getting, my blood pressure was affected and was fluctuating. I was getting like chest pains, I was getting shooting pains, I was getting a ton of symptoms. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Literally, I was like, this is not fun, like something's wrong with me. I spent thousands of pounds on tests. I had a brain scan, I had heart echoes, I had numerous blood tests, urine tests, ECGs, a 24-hour ECG that I wore, so many tests. they all come back. My brain's fine, my heart is fine, my bloods are fine, and I'm just like, what's going on? And it turns out like it's stress and anxiety, and I've taken on recently. I basically went through a stage where I was like, I've got so many opportunities coming into my life, which I feel so blessed to have. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna say yes to everything. And then all of a sudden, the workload of saying yes to everything kind of crept up on me. And there was one point, just the absolute worst point, like I literally thought I was going to die on the spot. I was in Cardiff with my friend Jodel. I was just catching up with him for one day, and I felt pretty bad for most of the day, but I didn't want to say anything to him because I didn't want to worry him, and I just wanted to catch up with my friend for one day. So I was like, I'll be fine, I'll just power through. We went to the gym, we had a session. I was pretty dizzy the whole time, but like I said, just trying to catch up, helping him with his training session as well. I was like, let's just power through, I'm sure I'll be fine. Went to Nando's afterwards, and I just felt it getting worse and worse. Getting like tingly hands, getting dizzy, and I was like, it got to a point where I was like, mate, I'm really sorry, but I need to go to the hospital. So we called an Uber, we got an Uber, 17-minute drive to the hospital, which is not ideal. We got there, and there was a queue for A&E, and I literally, there was a wheelchair in the line. Joe was like, I'll sit down here. I was like, okay. And then it just hit, and my hands and my forearms went numb. The weirdest feeling I've ever had. My neck went numb, and then it like creaked up my head. My head was numb. My hands were numb, my head was numb. When I was doing this, I couldn't feel like anything. I was struggling to breathe. I couldn't stand up. My eyesight was going blurry. Like, I legit thought I was about to die, and I was freaking out. I can barely remember like the situation. Apparently, like the queue let me go to the front. They signed me in. They saw me really quickly. Like, I mean, the hospitals and the healthcare we have in the UK is amazing. Like, yeah, you go to A&E, you wait for 6 hours, but it's because they've got so much to do and they're being thorough. Like the healthcare, in the UK, we're blessed to have the NHS. So yeah, shout out to the NHS. But I thought I was going to die, and essentially I had a panic attack. I've never had one like this before. It was this that made me realise I need to take a step back from a few things. I didn't train for almost 3 weeks. I didn't go on my social media. I didn't post anything for like over a week and a half, probably about 10 days. I didn't do any work. I'm blessed to be in a situation where I have an assistant, and luckily my assistant carried on with some of the work, but I didn't do anything. Yeah, I just literally just stepped back for a period of time, and then I added some like stress management protocols into my life, concentrate on my breathing, manage my calendar, my to-do list, my schedule, make sure that I wasn't overwhelmed, but I was still trying to find a balance, not overwhelmed to get too stressed, and not doing too much that I'm going to stress, not doing enough that I'm going to get anxious about productivity. But yeah, so I'm going to finish up there. I don't want to make this video for too long, but I hope this helps. A couple of things to take away from this. One, if you're feeling at all anxious, stressed, talk to someone. Find someone that you care about and understands and talk to them. If not, go to a professional. Two, try and balance your workload. You need to find the balance of not doing too much and then still doing enough. I'm going to finish up talking here, and I'm going to do something that really helps me with my stress and anxiety, and that's going to the gym. The plan is eat rice cakes and bananas, go to the gym, get hench, get super plump, leave feeling and looking whammo.
Sorry. This is part of my video now. He's desperate for that like
Greg came in here just now, and then he came back out to my car, and he went up to the wrong car, and he was trying to get into some car that wasn't mine.
Such
There's probably some guy in the gym watching Greg out the window, where it looks like he's trying to break into their car.
Oh yeah, now that you've found out that you have a missing disc in your back.
It's not missing.
Yeah, the disc is gone.
It's just not gone. If it was missing, I'd be in a lot of pain. Look at those glutes. Get a close up on the glutes, Greg.